Well, hello scrappers, welcome back to my channel. Mike here. We're back to working with this stuff from Mount Baker Mining and Metals that my friend Ken sent me. Ken sent a whole bunch of old computer motherboards off to Jason at Mount Baker Mining and Metals. Jason ground them up, ran them through his hammer mill, ran them through his shaker table, and sent Ken back all this stuff right here, a big bag of it. Ken might even have some more of this. This is the stuff from his shaker table. This is the #1 concentrates. This is basically all the metal. We've been working with this stuff in the last couple of videos. There's a lot of copper in here. There's a lot of tin. There's a lot of iron. There's some gold. I can see gold. I can see stuff that's shining gold. It's probably not showing up on the camera, but there's a lot of shiny gold in there. And so this is part 3 of me trying to figure out a way to get the gold precious metals out of this stuff. Jason's tried some things and he's kind of hit a wall. And I'm trying some things, and so far I've kind of hit a wall. But we're going to try some other stuff, because between the last video and this one, something interesting happened. But before we get into that, let's clear up some details from the last video. A little bit of a mea culpa here. Sharp-eyed viewer in that last video, part 2, left a comment. His name is Jesse Rogers. He's got some really good eyes, because he noticed I was misreading the assay report. Down here where it talks about the amount of copper, it looks like it says 26,300 parts per million. But he said, you know what? I think that number wrapped around. I think it just ran out of spaces to print the zeros, and that number wrapped around. And I think he's right. So it's actually, I think, 263,000 parts per million of copper. So there's 10 times as much copper in here as I thought. The number just wrapped around. So yeah, so there's a lot more copper in this material than I thought, but boy, it is doing a good job of hiding from me, because that has been my goal up to this point, and that was Jason's goal over at MBMM, to try and get rid of the bulk of the base metals in this stuff and leave behind just copper prills that could be converted into anodes for an electrowinning cell. And you electrowin away the copper and get the anode slimes with precious metals in them. Well, that was my idea too. Jason and I have kind of approached it from different directions, and we both kind of hit a wall. But there's apparently is a lot of copper in this stuff. It's just nothing I've done has really brought it forth. It's hiding in amongst all these other metals that are in this stuff. I mean, we've got everything under the sun in here. I mean, from bismuth to calcium to zinc to tin, iron, manganese, titanium, chromium, you name it, it's all in here. Some of it's not in here in large amounts, but there's a lot of it in here. And it is really screwing up the process of trying to just get down to the copper and the precious metals, which you'd think you'd be able to do. You know, you got to stand your classic reactivity series of metals here we went over with in the earlier video, and you know, should be able to react away all the more reactive metals and leave behind the less reactive ones down here at the bottom. So far it hasn't been working. Okay, so one more thing I want to clear up before we move on to what I've done since episode 2. I want to, you know, Jesse wasn't the only good person who left good comments. A lot of great comments, suggestions, ideas, constructive criticism. There was a lot of that. I appreciate it. Keep it coming. Feel free to comment on this video. But I want to reiterate, because with the biggest comment is always, use a magnet to take the iron out. Okay. Seems simple enough, right? No. So I want to reiterate why I'm not doing that. Because a lot of this gold-plated stuff in here is magnetic. A lot of that stuff I'm picking up with the magnet is plated gold. So they're probably spring steel pins, I would think. And another reason is I'm also picking up a lot of copper and tin balls, because they have been hammered around steel pins in Jason's hammer mills. So, you know, I'm going to pull a lot of precious metals and more valuable base metals out of here with the steel, which is why I'm not just using a magnet to take the steel out. So I just wanted to reiterate that really quickly because that is the #1 comment on both the videos so far. So just keep that in mind, but keep your good comments and suggestions and constructive criticisms coming, because you guys do have a lot of good ideas out there, and some of you have really keen, sharp eyes too, let me tell you. Good going, Jesse. Okay, so last time, episode 2, I was trying something I call reverse smelting. I was putting 200 grams of this stuff in a crucible with a basic flux and some sulfur, and I was burning off the base metals. And I had managed to burn off about 80% of the base metals and was left with a little prill of, well, who the heck knows what. It's incredibly resistant. I tried putting it in nitric acid. I got basically no reaction. It's in my fume hood right now, soaking in hydrochloric acid, actually boiling in hydrochloric acid. It's been boiling in hydrochloric acid for about 3 or 4 days, and nothing much is happening. So I don't know what kind of metal alloy we've got there, but it is darn resistant to acid. I mean, the acid has turned black. I'll give you a look at it later. I took off the heat so it can cool down. Once it's cool enough to handle, I'll show it to you. But the acid's turned black, the metal prill is turned black, but really, it's not really dissolving. So, you know, comments, again, you know, when I was doing my reverse smelting, they said, well, if, you know, 80 grams of sulfur gets rid of, you know, 80% of the material, up your sulfur amount. So that's what I did. So I upped the sulfur amount to 120 grams of sulfur to 200 grams of this stuff. Put it in the furnace. Oh my goodness, the fireworks display. There were sparks and flames and eruptions coming out of that furnace. It was like it was a volcano going off. The reaction was incredible. Incredible. And you know what I got in the end? Let me show you what I got in the end. It's right here. I got a big fat nothing. In the end, I poured that slag out into the cone mold, let it cool down. There was no metal prill left. Every bit of that 200 grams of metal had been burned away by the sulfur. So I thought, well, all the metal's still in there somewhere, including the precious metals. Let me see if I can get some metal back out of it. So I saved the slag. Put it back in a crucible. Added a little more soda ash to it to try and thin it down a little, because it was really thick and stiff and viscous with all those metal sulfides in it. Added, what was it? I think it was 20 of these 4-penny nails to it. Put it back in the furnace and cooked it for a while. Poured it back into the cone mold and got that right there. So I did get some of the metal back. I don't know if I got all of it, because like I said, that slag was pretty viscous, even though I tried to thin it down. But this is really dense. Really, really dense. Again, I have no idea what it is. It's pretty silvery. It doesn't really look like copper, but as dense as it is, I assume it must be a good proportion of copper. It is not magnetic, so this is not the iron from the nails. This has got to be metals lower down on the reactivity series that were kicked out of that slag by the iron. So let's look back at this reactivity series again and see what we got here. So we're up here at iron. I put iron in, so it should have changed places with anything below it. So I'm sure we got the copper. Hopefully we got the silver and the gold, platinum. But we probably also, I don't know if there's any cadmium in there. There was some cobalt I saw in the assay report, so we probably got cobalt. There was nickel I saw in the assay report, so we probably got nickel. A lot of tin in there, so we probably got tin in this. There's some lead in there, so we got lead. There is antimony and bismuth. I'll need to look at the assay report again. I don't remember how much of those were in there. Probably not much. But so we probably got everything below iron in this prill. Okay? So here's what I'm thinking. I need to do this again. Burn off all of this stuff. All of this. Get it all in the slag as sulfides, okay? And then reduce it back out to metal again, but instead of using iron, which is way up here, maybe if I move down here to lead. I got a fair amount of lead. The lead will displace everything below it. So we won't wind up with cadmium, cobalt, nickel, tin, you know, in there, which I think we're getting a lot of. So we should hopefully just get, hopefully not much antimony, not much bismuth, copper. There's probably no mercury in there because at those temperatures it will have boiled off. Silver, gold, platinum. So that's what we should be getting. So that's my next plan of attack. And we'll see how it goes. It may work, it may not. But I think I'm going to get set up to mix up another batch. And I think I can do this all in one melt. I don't think I need to do 2 melts like I did before. I'll just mix up 200 grams of this, 120 grams of the sulfur, and you know, in a really basic flux, and stir it until it looks like the reaction is done, and then I'll throw in some lead, and we'll see what happens. You know, give it a good few stirs, see what kind of reaction we get, dump it out in the cone mold, see what kind of prill we get. It should be interesting. It should be very interesting. So, okay, let me get set up for that and we'll get started. Okay, the weather looks like it's going to crap, so I don't know if I'm going to get into the furnace today, but before we do that, I want to give you a look at this anyway. This is the acid that I have been boiling this prill in for like 3 days. Okay, so this is hydrochloric acid. It looks black. It's actually very, very dark green. Okay, and here's the prill. Now it looks black too, but taking it out of the acid, I noticed there's a lot of black stuff coming off of it. That could be, you know, we've dissolved a lot of metal off of the surface of it, it looks like, but some stuff is left behind. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that was left behind on the surface. And this black powder could be precious metals. It's very possible this black powder is precious metals. We're leaching them slowly, very slowly leaching the base metals out of the thing. And the more resistant metals are staying behind. This could also, this black powder could also contain a lot of copper, because copper doesn't dissolve easily in hydrochloric acid. But yeah, I can see it's a little porous, so it doesn't look like much happened initially, but yeah, it's really powdery and porous on the surface anyway. I'm not sure how far in that goes, but so 3 days of boiling in hydrochloric acid has done something. So this is interesting. I might try some, yeah, this is very powdery. Look, it's almost like charcoal. I can write with it. This is very interesting. I think what I might do, in parallel with the pyrochemistry, yeah, this thing is, I wonder if I can't bust it up. Maybe if I hit it with a hammer it'll bust up, but yeah, it's definitely gone sort of spongy. I'm thinking that in parallel with the pyrochemistry experiments, I might try some good old-fashioned chemistry experiments. I've got all this stuff in this piece of paper towel now. I can try dissolving this in some aqua regia and see what we get. I mean, I thought about dissolving this whole thing in aqua regia. Not necessarily a practical way of doing things, and Ken asked me to find practical, inexpensive ways to get the precious metals out of this stuff. So, wow, that is really spongy. I am shocked. I hope that's showing up how spongy that is and soft. It's like a big chunk of charcoal, except it's very heavy. You know, you can write with it. Huh. Okay, that's very interesting. Ugh. Okay, so I think we will do 2 experiments in parallel and see what we get. Weather gets a little nicer because it looks like it's about to rain. We'll mix up some flux and get this stuff in the furnace and see what we can do. And we'll get this in a beaker of aqua regia, dissolve this black stuff, and see what it is. Okay, this could be interesting. Alright, so this is my homemade fume hood. For those of you who are new to my channel and haven't seen it, you've just been here for the smelting and electrochemistry videos. I do a lot of other chemistry videos where I extract gold and precious metals from e-waste. I'm going to make a little aqua regia. I've got that piece of paper towel that I wiped up all that black stuff off of that prill with in here. There's quite a lot of black powder on it. So I'm going to add some muriatic acid to this beaker. Muriatic hydrochloric. I'll put a little more in because there's a lot of paper pulp in there, or there will be when we're done. Now, aqua regia is Latin for, I believe, royal water. I'll put a little heat to that. And it is a mixture of acids that will dissolve precious metals like gold, platinum, metals like that are very resistant. And it's possible there's a lot of silver in there, in which case this isn't going to work too well. But if there's gold in there, we should be able to tell. So I started out, oh wow, will you look at that? Holy cow. Let me zoom in on that. Look at that reaction. Are you seeing that? I put nitric acid on that and there was an immediate, probably doesn't need any more nitric acid than that, but there was an immediate reaction going on there. Wow. That's pretty intense. Okay. It hasn't even warmed up yet. So, we got some reactive metals there. Some kind of reactive metal. So, we're going to let this warm up and see what happens. And then we'll do some tests and see if we can figure out what's in this stuff after that metal dissolves in there, in that aqua regia I just made. It doesn't take much nitric acid to make aqua regia, just a little bit. So hopefully that's enough to dissolve all that finely powdered metallic stuff that's in there. And then while this is going, we'll start working on mixing up some flux. Okay, while we're waiting on some results from what's going on in the fume hood, let's get some of this stuff mixed up. And in the furnace, the rain has passed. Everything is soaked. Especially out by where the furnace is. I probably ought to wait a day or two before firing it up, but I'm really curious about what we're going to get here. So, we're going to go for it. Mix up my usual batch. I'm a little tempted actually to cut down on the amount of material I'm using because the reaction was so violent last time, but well, we seem to have escaped unscathed. Didn't have really a boil over or anything, so we'll try doing it again just the way I did before. Alright, it's actually a bit much. 200 on the nose, perfect. Alright, that in there. I'm gonna have to open up the new soda ash. So 200 grams of the motherboard grindings. I've been doing 200 grams of the soda ash, but once all this stuff gets converted to sulfides, it gets the slag gets really thick and it's viscous. So I'm going to see if I can get a little bit more of the soda ash in the beaker, or in the flask, in the crucible, I should say. Let's see if we can do 250 grams, just to try and thin this stuff out once all the sulfides are made. Because, like I said, it is really thick and viscous. We might be flirting with a boil over now since I'm putting more soda ash in than I have been. Let's throw in the usual 50 grams of silica, just finely sifted silica sand. And again, you know, I'm making this up as I go along, so I don't know if this is the best recipe. If any of you old hands at smelting out there have a better recipe that's going to dissolve, you know, create a flux that will dissolve a whole lot of sulfides well, without getting too thick and viscous, feel free to leave a comment, suggestion. Okay? We're going to put in 120 grams of sulfur. This is going to light our fire, let me tell you. The sulfur and all that metal in there, that's going to react just short of explosively. We might have something that looks like a fairly good simulation of a volcanic eruption coming out of the top of the furnace. And I really haven't experimented with the total amount of sulfur I'm using here. 120 grams, that might be actually, you know, might actually be a bit more than is needed for this process, but come on. I took some out. I need a more sensitive scale. I'm sure we're pretty close to 120 grams. Okay. Yeah, we might not actually need the full 120 grams to get all of this metal converted to sulfides. It's just the amount I've been using. So, yeah, we're really getting that crucible full. I want to put a little borax in there too to help thin the flux some. We're running out of room. I can hunt around and find a bigger crucible. I can get about 50 grams of borax in there. Oh, way too much. Way too much, and it's all dirty with sulfur now. Ah, good, 50. All right. But we'll give it a try. If it boils over a little bit, it boils over a little bit. The next question is, how much lead do I want to put in there? That is a really good question, too. Let's see. How much is that? That's 30 grams. How much material do I want to recover? Keeping in mind it's probably going to be mostly copper and any precious metals. Let's just do some arbitrary number. Let's do like 40 grams of lead. And see how much metal we get out of this. 40 grams, perfect. If this even works. So, alright, I'm going to set the lead aside. It's not going in yet. So what I'll do is I'll mix this stuff up really well. We'll get it in the furnace. We'll get it heating up. And after the reaction is done, and we've got a bunch of sulfides created in there, then we'll throw the lead in and let it convert some of those low reactivity metal sulfides like copper back into metal, and we'll pour it and see if we get a prill. And I debated whether using lead or using litharge, lead oxide, would be better. I'm not sure. Again, if you guys have an opinion, let me know. A lot of you people are very smart about this kind of stuff. I don't know if litharge might be better. Don't happen to have any litharge at the moment, so I'm using lead, but I can always get some if this looks like it's going to work. And if it looks like litharge will work better, I'll get that. So let me know what you think. And I think this is mixed up good enough. We'll get it in the furnace and we'll get it fired up. Okay, we're getting a pretty good reaction going on in there as this stuff starts to warm up on the hot plate. Lots of bubbling. The liquid's turned sort of yellow-orange. That's what happens with aqua regia. That's the color it gets. We're starting to get some, may not show up on the camera very well, we're starting to get some brown-orange fumes in the beaker there. That tells me that metal is going into solution. You get those kind of fumes with aqua regia when it starts dissolving metal. That's nitrogen dioxide coming out of there. So we are dissolving some sort of metal in there. I would imagine it's probably a mixture of different metals. It's everything that couldn't be leached out by the hydrochloric acid. I'm thinking there's probably some copper, some silver, gold, platinum. We'll see. We're going to let this go. Eventually that paper towel pulp should fall apart and all that black stuff should go into solution. It might take a little more nitric acid, but I kind of doubt it. I put a lot in there. Doesn't usually take much. And then we should have a yellow-orange liquid that we can run some tests on and see what's in it. So just gotta let it cook for now. Be back in a bit with this. Okay, let's get this thing started. Oh, everything is so wet though. That rain. It's gushy over here. Furnace may take a bit to dry out before starts producing real heat. Try and get you and look at the sort of volcanic eruption that's going to come out of here once that sulfur starts interacting with all that metal in there. It was impressive the last time I did it, so I can't get the camera too close though because all kinds of stuff comes flying out, but we'll see what we can see once the action starts. Well, it looks like the reaction in here is almost complete. It looks like there's still a little bit of metal going into solution down there. There's still some bubbling and boiling right there in the middle. But it looks like it's pretty much done. Look, the paper pulp is, the paper is completely falling apart to pulp. So, yeah. So we will do some tests on that and see what we got in there. I got some tricks up my sleeve for determining what kind of metals we've got in there. So we'll try that out. Well, things are starting to heat up in there. The light show ought to be starting soon. So keep an eye out for it. I'll try to get some of it on film for you. So while waiting on developments, I've turned my attention back to this prill that I soaked in hydrochloric acid for 3 days. I'm trying to determine how thick this spongy layer, which I suspect is mostly just finely divided metallic copper is. And I don't know if that's showing up, but I'm back down to shiny metal in there. I would say that layer is at least 1/2 millimeter thick, if not a little thicker. And I rubbed a lot of it off earlier. So, yeah. So 3 days of soaking in hydrochloric acid, put this spongy layer on top that was at least, you know, probably before I started rubbing it off, at least 1 millimeter or more thick. And now we're down to the metal underneath. I mean, at that rate it would take a long time to dissolve this entire prill, but it's giving me some idea what's going on, so that's helpful. That is helpful. Now, one possibility would be instead of trying to dissolve the whole prill, I could turn this into cornflakes or shot, you know, by melting down some of these prills and dumping them into water, and we wind up with stuff with a lot more surface area, and the acid would attack it a lot better than it would this bulk material. So that's a possibility to think about for the future too. So, very interesting. Let's go see what's going on with the foundry furnace. Oh yeah, the magma is rising. The light show has begun. Let's see here if I can get some of this on video close up. Not too close though. Getting those fumes. There goes a nice flare. Oh yeah. Oh, there's some heat coming out of there. Yeah, the light show has definitely begun. Fortunately, it doesn't look like it's going to try and boil over. I think we might be safe there. I was afraid it might. If I wanted to, I might even be able to dump in a little bit more flux. Wow. Look at that. Look at that. Oh yeah, there we go. Whoa! Okay, major eruption. It's Mount St. Helens in there. This would be impressive at night. Oh, it's hot. I gotta back off. Whoa, but it's cool, but it's hot. Well, there was a late flare. I was thinking it was about done. The light show has subsided a lot. The bubbling is going down. I'm going to let this continue to react for a while, and once it looks like the reaction is done and the bubbling has subsided a lot, we'll put the lead in. I want to try and burn off any excess sulfur in there, so I'm not going to put the lead in too soon. I want to make sure we've gotten rid of excess sulfur. I don't want the sulfur to I don't want the lead to go the way of the metals that I'm turning into sulfides right there. I want it to have the opposite effect. I want the lead to reduce the sulfides back to metal. So we're just going to let this cook for a while. Since it's still flaring a little bit, there's obviously still some excess sulfur in there. Okay, this reaction seems to be done. I'm going to turn the heat off on it, let it cool down a little bit, and I'll take it out of the fume hood in a bit and we'll run some tests on it. I've got some stannous chloride solution. We can use that for starters, and that'll tell us if we've got any precious metals in solution here. This should be interesting. So let me let that cool down, and then we'll get it out on the bench and we'll run a test on it. Well, the reaction seems to be done. There's nothing else happening. There's no more bubbling. I got an iron rod here. There's a thick layer or scum of sulfides on top, but there's liquid underneath. So I think I'm going to still let it cook a little while longer, just to make sure I got rid of all the sulfur in there before I put the lead in, then I'll stir it in, and we'll see how it goes. Okay, this has been sitting here for a while now. I'm hoping that any leftover sulfur has had a chance to burn off. Got the lead here. Try throwing it in, and we will see what happens. I'm going to stir it. It feels like it's melted already, which I'm not surprised about because it's probably about 2,000 degrees in there. And I'm going to try and get this just as hot as I can. Close off this hole a little bit. And I'll give it a stir again before I pour it, but I want to get this just as hot as I can to try and reduce the viscosity of that slag there before the pour. So hopefully all the metal will wind up in the bottom of the cone in one prill and not distributed through the slag. Yeah, it got more viscous after I put the cold lead in, so we'll let that heat up really good for a while before I pour. Alright, be back. So I'm not really sure how long I should wait before pouring. How long it's going to take any reaction to happen in there. If this was an aqueous reaction, I'd know that it would have been over almost immediately, but we're working in a non-aqueous medium that's really pretty viscous, so I don't know. But the weather is starting to look a little misty, so I may have to get off the dime and pour this pretty quick, just in case it decides it wants to rain again. I don't want to do that in the rain. Don't want to have a wet cone mold when I pour this stuff in. So, I don't know. Maybe I'll give it a couple more minutes while the cone mold preheats, and then we'll pour. Get that good and warm, get any moisture out of it. It's been misty. And then we'll pour, see what we get. Okay, I guess we're about as ready as we're going to get. Give it one last stir before I pour it. I don't know if the stir is doing any good or not. The slag looks a lot less viscous now. Had a chance to heat up really good. Oh, the plinth is coming out again. Oh well. Ooh, that's hot. Wow. Ooh. Through the gloves. And up on my forearm up there, above the glove, that radiant heat is terrible. Wow. Whew. Okay. There's so much sulfides floating on top of that cone mold that don't get to see the cool convection patterns, but I'm gonna let that cool down a little bit and move it in front of my big fan and leave it for an hour or hour and a half until it's cool enough to handle, and then we'll dump it out and see what, if anything, I have produced. Okay, this is actually sat overnight. I got busy with some other stuff and just left it sit, so we're going to test it now and see if we can figure out what it is. Although, it's really, I don't think, going to be too hard to figure out what that black stuff was that I dissolved in there in the aqua regia, because look at the color it's turned. It's green. It's very green. That's copper. So most of the black stuff that I got off of this prill obviously was copper. And you know, when I was looking at the video, when I dropped the nitric acid on it, there was an immediate puff of reaction and an immediate green color. So I'm pretty sure it's mostly copper. What's probably happening is we had kind of like a bronzy compound here, a mixture of tin and copper. And the prolonged boil in hydrochloric acid dissolved the tin out of the matrix and left behind a spongy layer of copper on the surface. Because copper doesn't really dissolve in hydrochloric acid that well. It's just kind of turning green, which, yeah, the prill itself is kind of turning green, which tells me there's copper on the surface of it. So, yeah, I'm pretty sure most of that black powder that I dissolved in here was copper, but we'll give it a test. Got some stannous chloride solution here. We'll give it a test and see if we see anything else. Given the size of the sample I ran, we may or may not see anything. But stannous chloride is really helpful for identifying whether you or not you have any precious metals in solution. By the color that you get and the intensity of it, it'll tell you a lot about what you've got in solution here. So we'll give it a try and see. Ooh, you know, there's a faint purple there. That's a very faint purple. I don't know if that showed up at all. It's fading, but there was a faint purple look there. It bleached most of the green color out of it, turned purple briefly, and now it's kind of a, yeah, yellow-green, orangey color. So very faint. But let me tell you this. Purple is the color of gold in solution. Okay? If you've got a lot of gold, it'll be such a dark purple it'll look black with stannous chloride. Orange is kind of the color of platinum in solution. And sort of greenish orange would be the color of palladium. We know there's some palladium in this stuff. Saw it in the assay report. Okay? We know there's gold in it. We can see it when we look at this stuff. And I wouldn't be surprised if there's a little bit of platinum. Given the small amount of material that was on that piece of paper towel I dissolved in here, I'm a little bit surprised that we saw anything. Okay? And this is darkening up. This is actually starting to darken up. This is, I would say this is a very faint positive for gold. Possibly a little bit of palladium showing up too. But yeah, this is darkening up over time. Mostly copper, but we are starting to see a little bit of the precious metals. So we got the precious metals in this prill. There's not a lot of them, but this is a small sample. What I might do just for funsies, I'm not sure it's a practical method for dealing with this stuff, but I might dissolve the whole prill in Aqua Regia. Let me think about it. It may not be, like I said, a practical method for doing this, but okay. So I'm getting a handle on what we've got here. This is the prill that, I put 80 grams of sulfur with 200 grams of the motherboard grindings, and we burned away 80% of the base metals, and we're left with this little prill. So obviously this little prill is mostly copper. We found the copper finally. It's here. It's green. And there was some tin in there, which was probably stripped away by the hydrochloric acid boils. The metals lower on the reactivity series than copper are in here too. So we got the gold, palladium, platinum. There's probably silver in here too. Yeah, there's probably, all the silver's probably in here too. So putting this in Aqua Regia is maybe not such a good idea, because the silver would come out as silver chloride solids. Let me think about that. There may be better ways to treat this. So let me think about that. We'll go back to the pyrometallurgy for now, but at least we have finally found the copper. The copper that has been eluding me so much for so long is actually there. The surface of this prill is covered with copper powder, porous copper powder. Okay, let's go back to the pyrometallurgy. That's really darkening up. So we do have some gold in there. Okay, little bit of gold there. Cool. We're starting to find the metals. Now I just got to sort of find an easier way to separate them and isolate them. But they're there. Cool. Alright, this stuff's had a chance to cool off. Let's dump it out and see what we got. The suspense is killing me. Wow. Well, there's a prill there. Pretty silvery though. I was hoping it'd be more coppery. Slag on it. Huh. There it is. We'll take a close-up look at it. Weigh it too. See, I put what, 80 grams of lead back in there? We'll see what this weighs. I will sweep up that slag and add it to my slag bucket. I'm saving the slag maybe for future processing, or maybe for just disposal. We'll see how it works out. Okay, let's see what we got here. Here's our prill. We put 80 grams of lead in there. What do we get back out? Ah! We got 80 grams out! So, this prill's pretty heavy. Is it all lead? Let me see. Let me take a knife to it and see how soft it is. I would say we just got lead back. Let me try it on the bottom. It's a little tougher down here. There might be some other metals alloyed with it down at the bottom of the prill, or at the top of the prill. That they would have, less dense metals would have floated to the top, but we just got our lead back. So that didn't work. Another failed experiment. Maybe lead oxide would have worked better. So that's a possibility for the future. Any precious metals that were in that stuff ought to be alloyed with the lead. Good proportion of them anyway. Might not have got all of them because that slag was pretty viscous. But the gold, the silver, platinum group metals ought to be in here. So this could be compelled down to get those, but I don't think there's really that much in here to make it worthwhile. I could probably reuse this lead a few times. We're getting back towards something I was thinking about doing in episode 2, which was in liquation. So, okay, I'll have to think about this. Figure out where to go from here. It was not the result I was hoping for, but it was definitely an interesting and somewhat amusing result. It looks like the whole exercise was pretty pointless. Ha! Well, on the other hand, there is no such thing as useless knowledge, so knowing what doesn't work can be as important as knowing what does work sometimes. So I guess we've made that much progress anyway. We know what doesn't work. So iron is reactive enough to bring other metals out of that slag solution, but lead isn't. Okay. Maybe it needed to be in there longer. I left it in there quite a while. Let's take a quick look at the reactivity series of metals again. So we put iron in, and I know we got tin and copper out, and looks like we got a little bit of gold, palladium, maybe some platinum out of it. Okay. But we didn't really want the tin. We probably got some nickel and cobalt too. But we didn't really want those. So we tried putting in lead, hoping to get the stuff below it, but that didn't work. Not elemental lead anyway. We could still try some lead oxide. That might work a little better. Certainly don't want to put tin in. I don't know. It's a thorny problem, for certain. Okay, this is going to need a little thinking. And of course, if you have suggestions, ideas, let me know. Leave a comment. You guys have a lot of good ideas. Okay, let me show you another interesting phenomenon. I don't know, it's just dark in there. I don't know if it's showing up. But the bottom of the crucible is eaten out. Up to about a level of here. It's all hollowed out in there. Kind of weird. Not sure. Let's see if I can get you a better look in there. Not sure what's going on with that. This crucible has been used for multiple times where I've done the sulfur and metal reaction, and that has not happened before. The only thing I did different this time was add lead to it. So I'm not sure what went on there. But yeah, this crucible is not long for the world. It really ate out a section from about here down. Interesting, very interesting. Not sure what's going on there. Okay, so what, if anything, have we learned in this video? It may not seem like much at first, but I think we have learned a couple of important things. Well, we've learned some things that don't work. Okay. But we've also found the copper. We found the copper here. And we found the copper here. So what we've discovered is what we have here is, after burning away a large proportion of the base metals, we're left with prills that are basically a bronze alloy. A mixture of copper and tin, which I guess would be expected looking at the assay report and the reactivity series of metals. Now, how much tin is in there? That's really hard to tell. I mean, we could look at the assay report and see that, tin, there's a whole lot less tin than copper. But for some reason, even though, tin's here, copper's down here, they seem to be following each other through the pyrometallurgy. Not what I was expecting, so that's something I learned. I'm used to more aqueous chemistry, and I do a lot of that here with getting the precious metals out of e-waste. And in aqueous chemistry, it's fairly straightforward to separate the different metals. If you want to get copper out of solution, you put iron in. It works. In pyrometallurgy, well, you get a lot of other stuff too. In aqueous chemistry, if you want to get silver out of solution, you put copper in. It just works. But with the pyrometallurgy, it seems like you get a lot of other stuff too. So that's one thing I've learned. It's not so straightforward as what I do with my beakers and test tubes. What's going on inside a hot crucible in the foundry furnace. So that's a pretty important lesson to learn. Now, one thing I am thinking, I'm liking the sulfur process. If I tweak the amount of sulfur, because these prills here, these four, these came from my earlier process where I was trying to burn away the base metals with various oxidizers, and I kind of hit a wall at 30% of the metal gone, and there's still a fair amount of iron in here. Okay, but the process with the sulfur seems to take the iron out first. The iron's gone, and then it starts working on the other stuff. Well, it probably takes the zinc out, aluminum first, because they're more reactive than the iron, but the iron's gone and it starts working on the other stuff. So I like the sulfur process because we're getting rid of all of this anyway. Okay? Certainly we're leaving behind tin, copper, and everything else. But we're getting rid of all this. So that's good. So I'm thinking if I do a few more experiments and tweak the amount of sulfur I put in there, I might wind up with prills, that are mostly copper, but are contaminated with, enough tin to make them look silvery. But is that too much tin to use as an anode in an electrorefining cell? I mean, the tin's going to screw things up. There is no doubt about that, especially when it comes to getting the precious metals out of the anode slimes. But is it going to screw up the operation of the cell? That's the question. I don't know. The cell might work just fine, and we might end up with a lot of tin sulfates in the bottom of the cell, which, will be a headache for when I try to get the precious metals out of those slimes. But the cell itself might just work fine with whatever proportions of copper and tin we've got in this stuff. Haven't found anybody do XRF on these yet. Some good suggestions. I need to do some research based on the suggestions you folks have given me in that direction. Still have some other options. I talked about liquation at the end of episode 2. That's still another option, liquation. I may look into that. Another option might be cornflaking these prills and trying to see how they dissolve in hydrochloric acid. Then when there's a lot more surface area, we might get down to just, powdered copper and whatever precious metals are there. So that's a possibility. Then it'd be really easy to pour anodes out of powdered copper. So that's a possibility. I got some ways forward. I think I'm going to do some off-camera experimenting and work on this some more and see if I can make some actual progress on this before I put out a part 4. Unless there's a lot of a lot of interest in seeing my experiments along the way. Let me know. Leave a comment. Let me know what you think. If you'd like to see my experiments along the way, there's going to be failures. Maybe like a blooper reel. At least you get to see the occasional fireworks display coming out of the foundry furnace like today. I hope you enjoyed the fireworks. No extra charge for that. So, but yeah, let me know. And I'm gonna keep, like I said, working on this off camera. And once I have some sort of path forward, assuming I will, there will be part 4. And I'll bring that to you. So thanks for watching this far and sticking it out, and keep those great comments and suggestions coming. So I think I'm going to end this here. I don't think it was a totally wasted experience. I think I learned something. I hope you learned something. And I will apply this towards the future. So I'll see you in part 4 when it comes out, and I'll see you in my other videos that are coming out soon on other subjects. So subscribe to see those future videos. Press the little bell icon YouTube wants you to press to be notified when the new videos come out. As a subscriber, you'll be notified when I release a new video if you press that little bell icon. Check out my second channel, Electric Geek 64. There's always good stuff going on over there, including some new content that just came out. And I will see you in the next video. Thanks a lot for watching this one. Bye.